gun owners at large are actually really nice people. We're not all monsters. I like the fact that I can sort of be the Bob Ross of guns.
I think we're just getting started.
We want people to find a video and go, wow, here's this redneck in Georgia doing some crazy stuff with a gun.
You ever have one of those days where you just need an AR break?
They perpetuate a message that gun owners fit into a certain stereotype. The day that I went home and told my wife, you know, hey, I quit Moss.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this YouTube thing full time. You what? You did what?
Yeah.
Your average Americans hate politics. One group of people who hate law enforcement, another group of people who worship the ground that law enforcement walks on. I believe that there's a middle ground there where some true nuance really lies in the situations. Maybe these political videos might not get as many views as some entertaining gun meltdown or something like that, but can I sleep at night?
For non-gun owners who have never shot a gun, guns is basically a proxy for violence. These don't belong in today's society.
I mean, if someone had never been exposed to guns, I could see where that would be a logical standpoint.
I've never held or shot a gun, but what's fascinating to me are creators who talk about guns like I talk about cameras, computers, editing, production, and all that stuff.
When I do point the gun, it does tend to just naturally dip.
One of the creators crushing it in the space is Eric from Iraq Veteran 8888. He started back in 2008 reviewing guns at a gun store he used to work.
Week's Gun Gripe, we're going to talk about tactical versus practical.
Eric's first show was Gun Gripes. It was just an outlet for him to talk about whatever he was bothered about in the gun culture. And that series blew up.
Fashionable firearms.
Fashionable firearms.
And today, his channel is closing in on 3 million subscribers, and he talks about all sorts of things. He talks about Second Amendment rights.
Line in the sand has to be drawn somewhere when it comes to the Second Amendment.
He talks about politics, responsible gun ownership.
If you don't know how to do something, how to unload or load the gun, do not be afraid to ask questions.
And sometimes he just makes videos blowing stuff up. Those are honestly my favorite.
Oh, this thing is getting hot.
My goal with starting this channel was to talk to creators and explore how they make a living. And since I live and work in New York, I was mostly talking to people like me, musicians, entrepreneurs, people already in the creator space. So I wanted to switch things up and explore something which I do not understand at all: guns. To do that, I had to fly all the way from New York and come to Georgia. In this conversation, yes, we get into the politics of gun ownership, Second Amendment, all that stuff. But the core of this interview is exploring how Eric makes a living just shooting guns and talking about something which he's passionate about. If you don't like guns, that's fine. I don't really care. But what I do care about is passionate people being able to make their money by exploring their passion.
You're right. How did you know that?
do
You
my
know all
research.
kinds of stuff. This guy's done his research, y'all.
All right, Eric, I'm gonna come clean right now and let you know that I have never held or shot a gun. And this is quite the sight I'm looking at right now. But I'm gonna use that to kind of like segue into a question, which is, for people like me, for people who have never shot guns, been around people who have shot guns, what is the one thing which we do not understand about the gun owning community?
Well, I would say the answer to that question would be that, you know, most people that don't own guns, or maybe they don't understand gun owners, maybe they fail to understand that gun owners are just average people that just happen to own guns. You know, there's a lot of people from many different backgrounds that own firearms, people of different religious persuasions, sexual persuasions, different backgrounds, different races. No matter whatever you put in there, everybody owns guns. And guns are simply a tool that can be used for a variety of different purposes. And I think the majority of people out there that haven't been exposed to guns, once they do get a little bit of experience with it, most people end up liking it pretty well.
Yeah, and so like at this point, you are not just a gun owner, you are one of the leading gun creators, YouTubers. How has that shift been from like just being part of the community, someone who is actively a member of like gun owning, used to work at a gun store, but now you represent them kind of, especially on YouTube? How has that shift been for you?
It makes me feel so good. I mean, I love the fact that so many people, you know, connect with the message that we put out on the channel, and they love what we do. And we're kind of like this in this weird kind of redneck science, mad scientist sort of persuasion with what we do on the channel, where you never know what we're going to be doing, whether it's a meltdown video or it's a gun gripe or a top 5, or, you know, we do so many different things, and it appeals to such a wide variety of different people. And I like the fact that I can sort of be the Bob Ross of guns, if you will.
That's a really good way to put it. As a creator, at what point in your career or the timeline of your YouTube content creation did you actually realize that you can actually, do this for a living?
I remember the first smartphone that I ever had. Y'all might not be old enough to remember these, but the old BlackBerry 8830
Oh,
world
I've
phones.
been around those, yeah.
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 I had the old BlackBerry 8830, which was the world phone.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first phones, if some of y'all don't know, that you actually get your emails and everything's on. It was cool to be able to send an email on your phone.
Yeah.
And one day I woke up and I had email notifications turned on for subscriptions. So anytime someone subscribed, I got an email notification. One day I woke up and I checked my 8830, and I think I had 1,400 emails that were subscriber notifications. And I think it was on that day that I kind of realized, like, wow, there might be something to this. Like, I think people dig what we're doing, and we're starting to get some people following us.
And from then, like, stuff started rolling, and today you have almost close to 3 million subscribers on YouTube. All the gun owners I personally know, they are hyper responsible about owning a gun. They understand what comes with it. They take necessary precautions. But on the flip side of it, when you're talking to 3 million, almost 3 million subscribers, who most of them who you have never met or known, how do you account for that variable that, like, what you're preaching may or may not end up with, responsible viewers? Like, how do you account for that variability?
Well, I think that what we have to do is we have to have everything that we do on the channel has to be done in an air of responsibility.
Yeah.
So that's why we focus on safety. That's why we focus on safe handling practices. That's why we focus on education and information.
Mm-hmm.
Like we not only want to be entertaining, like we want people to find a video and go, wow, here's this redneck in Georgia doing some crazy stuff with a gun. And this is fun. Like, hey, this guy's melting down a gun.
Yeah.
But that's why we also, do a lot of videos that are geared towards beginners.
Yeah.
We want those people to discover that video and go, wow, I learned something that's going to make me more responsible. It's going to make me safer. And it's going to make me a more well-informed firearms owner, especially if someone is just starting to get into guns for the first time.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of years, we've cut a lot of videos that are catered towards new shooters. 2020 and on, we've seen a huge surge of new gun owners from many different backgrounds, many different communities, but people are buying guns in record numbers. So it actually does put some responsibility on a person like me to put out content that serves that community and lets those new gun owners know, hey, there's information out here that's geared towards me as a new gun owner to help me be more responsible and safe and capable with my new purchase.
That's really nuanced, and I appreciate that you kind of like geared your content towards those beginner people. And like you said, during 2020 especially, the country saw a huge surge in gun ownership, and there are like a lot of reasons which contributed to that. Primarily, the country was going through a bunch of things, starting with the COVID, and like there was this whole like omnipresent feeling of that what we have for granted is probably not granted. Like, we are not allowed to go outside. There was vaccine, there were all these things. So like, how did you personally adjust to what was going in the country back then? And why do you think that equated to a spike in gun ownership?
Well, I think that a lot of the reasons that people were buying guns, because during all of these things that were going on, they found that it may not have necessarily been that the police didn't want to be there to protect them in whatever situation, but maybe in some of these cities where there was so much unrest and crazy things going on, that the police can't be everywhere. And I think people kind of get that as a wake-up call when they see, holy crap, my neighbor's door just got broken in or something just happened. And if I call the cops, they may not even show up at all. So I think that people kind of realize, wow, it's not that I don't have faith in the police, but, they can't be everywhere. And I think that was a wake-up call for people to understand that ultimately you are your own first line of defense, that you have to be able to protect your life and your livelihood and ultimately even the lives of your neighbors and your family and everything. So I think folks just saw it as a wake-up call that our system can be a frail system in the right circumstances. And over time, people realize, hey, maybe a lot of folks weren't even into guns that much prior to that. But sometimes it takes a little bit of a wake-up call for someone to realize, hey, I may not be a super dyed-in-the-wool gun owner type, maybe like me.
Yeah.
But you know what? I understand the importance that I need to have the tools to protect myself.
You're obviously a gun owner, but like on top of that, you're also a creator who talks about Second Amendment rights and all that stuff which surrounds it. During that time, how exactly did you account for all these new people who were tuning in, who had no context of who you were? Like, what was the primary message that you were trying to get across, given the fact there was so many things going on with the country?
Oh, what a great question. Yes. Okay. So, education.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, what are people looking for, right? If someone goes on Google, they're a new gun owner, and they're going to type in a search engine on YouTube or Google or wherever, hey, what do I need to know about defensive ammunition? Or what do I need to know about different action types? Or what type of gun is good for home defense? Or what are the rules of gun safety? What are the things I need to know? They're seeking this information out. So my job is to drop those breadcrumbs in a place where they can find it and find their way home, essentially. And I just really geared the content towards education and trying to educate the populace and think, okay, if I were a new gun owner that knew nothing about what was going on, what would I search for? What would I look for? Okay, well, maybe that's what I need to gear my content for. We make content for everybody. I mean, I have a lot of advanced stuff on my channel as well for the, die-hard aficionado.
Yeah.
But we also never forget that the roots, to be an ambassador of the Second Amendment means to also lay down the roots and the foundations for people to discover that we're not all monsters too. That's another important thing. Reaching out and letting these folks that are new gun owners understand that gun owners at large are actually really nice people. Like, we'd give anyone the shirt off our back. So it's important for them to understand that they're becoming a part of a community that are some of the most wholesome, down-to-earth, honest, loving people that you could ever ask to know.
My channel is not about like politics or guns or anything like that. My channel is about like content creators and the importance of like messaging and stuff like that. So tell me about how exactly do you communicate that? And the reason I want to hone in on that because like gun owners and Second Amendment and people in this culture have been painted a certain way when it comes to the mainstream representation, right? And the stuff and the work that you are doing has a pushback to it, right? So how do you account for those opposing forces when it comes to what you are doing versus what's already out there?
Well, I mean, it was Gandhi himself that said, be the change in the world you want to see. So that's all I can do. All I can do is be the change. All I can do is continuously and consistently put out content that I feel represents my culture the best. That's all we can all do. I mean, even the anti-gun side does that. They perpetuate a message that gun owners fit into a certain stereotype, and they can preach that message all they want. But my job is to counteract that message by letting people know, hey, we're very, very forthcoming and honest and easygoing people. So the way that messaging gets across is consistency. For us to consistently be fair and balanced and relatively centralist. Like, I don't throw mud at either side. I may not necessarily just make some rant about how I think the anti-gunners are so wrong in every way, but I also won't get on the mountain of trying to say that, well, we're right in every single way either. I try to look at things with a balanced and fair perspective. And I think that's where you're going to win people over, is just by being fair.
Yeah.
And I try to be fair.
No, that's awesome. Let's just quickly go back to your come up in the YouTube space. So, and I like your story, especially because a lot of YouTubers, especially the ones I'm friends with, they are hyper intentional about getting into the YouTube space because they want to be content creators, and that's awesome. But like, your story is kind of different because you used to work at a gun store and you used to be part of this culture, and that was your day to day, right? So tell me the story of you working at Moss Pond and how you started the first show inside the gun store.
Yeah, so I've always been a gun owner my whole life. So for me, this was never something that I decided, well, I'm going to start a gun channel on YouTube and it's going to become something. Like, it was never my intention to like set out to be some content creator in some certain space, as you said. It sort of all happened by accident. And my coworker and I, Barry, started making these little gun gripe videos. Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Barry from Moss Pond and Gun. And today we have our 80th gun gripe. This is episode number 80. And of course, they're very successful. I think now I want to say we're almost 400 and some odd episodes in. It might be more than that. It's quite a few. But Barry and I started cutting these gripes in the shop. And of course, the Mosses, Michelle and Carrie, they've been so good to me and they've treated me so well.
Those are the gun store owners.
That's correct. Yeah. They own Moss. And, they would allow me to use props in the store, which obviously from a sales perspective, it makes sense that if someone's using stuff in your store, people
Yeah.
are naturally going to come in and shop
Buy
and
it,
things
yeah.
like that. So
It's
we
promotion, yeah.
put Moss on the map.
That's awesome.
In
yeah.
those early days. But really, it was Barry and I starting Gun Gripes that really helped put the channel on the map. And I think we got up to, I think we hit 250,000 subscribers
Yeah.
within a few short months of the first Gun Gripe video.
Most people who knew you initially, and correct me if I'm wrong here, most people who still know you the most do so by knowing Gun Gripes. Like Gun Gripes is the reason your channel kind of like blew up initially, and like it's kind of like still has that hangover from it. So talk to me about the come up and the ideation behind that show. And for someone who doesn't understand guns, like how would you explain that show? And also I want you to tell me the story of like how you and Barry met.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Barry and I met quite some time ago. My grandpa used to take me in Moss all the time. And gosh, I think I met Barry when I was about 14 years old, 15 years old.
Yeah.
I remember Moss used to sell these dummy hand grenades. And my grandpa went in there and Barry sold me a dummy hand grenade. And I just thought he was the coolest guy. Dr. Barry Logan, report to the armory, please. You were supposed to be here at 7 sharp.
I know, Sarah told me I couldn't break away. There's one thing killing a zombie and another capturing one in the wild.
I hear you. And of course, as I began to get older and coming up a little bit more in that space, I would always go in and chat with Barry. So I'd known Barry for quite some time before I ever started to work at Moss. And in terms of the content, I would say what put us on the map was certainly Gun Gripes and also our meltdown videos.
Yeah.
And our top 5 guns were very popular. We just kind of had this idea of, I don't know how far in the nerdiness we want to get.
Go for it. Yeah, I want you to nerd out.
The thing about search engines and okay, again, going back to the previous conversation, what are people looking for, right? How to.
Yeah.
Top 5.
Yeah.
You're posing a question. How do I do this?
Yeah.
So people ask questions to search engines. So if you can gear your content around, hey, I'm going to answer a question that someone's posing. Well, then if you're giving them that answer, it becomes an emotional connection. In the same way, if I ask my favorite educator, like my science teacher, a science question, and he answers that question, you establish an emotional response to an educator when you seek out knowledge. When you're given knowledge by someone, it just creates that connection. And I think that that's what people connected to, that I was willing to share knowledge, that I was willing to put all that content out there. Now, going back to Gripes, to the uninitiated, someone that may not be a gun person, look, us gun owners have had a lot to complain about over the years. I mean, not only untrue stereotypes about us or tropes that get thrown around about gun owners that are untrue. So there tends to be a lot to complain about.
This is Eric and Barry from Moss Pawn and Gun, and today we have another Gun Gripe episode for you. Today we're going to be discussing the issue of city problems affecting the whole state.
Right. So Gun Gripes was an outlet for Barry and I to kind of talk about some of our experiences over the years of being, basically the things you see in the gun industry, whether it's just unsafe practices or slang or, dumb things that people do. You're kind of calling it out in a way and sort of bringing attention to it. But it's also educational, because if someone watches a Gun Gripes and they see something we talked about, like maybe a range accident that we witnessed, well, then maybe the internet community at large would be a better place, because now people go, oh, wow, well, we definitely don't want to do that.
Safety, yeah.
Hey, here's how you shouldn't handle revolvers like this, or you shouldn't do this or that. So it's also education.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of complaining about it, but we're doing it in a way that tells people, hey, here's how not to do this.
I mean, at that point, I obviously never met Barry, but like Barry, I'm pretty sure had no idea where this is going. Like, what is YouTube? I'm pretty sure he didn't know. But later he did find out that he is a pretty successful character in a pretty successful show, in a pretty successful channel. So how did Barry react to that whole thing? And obviously Barry is like no longer with us. How did the community react to his loss?
Well, back then, to be honest with you, we didn't really view it that way. I mean, we were successful and we had a few views and we were making a little money. It wasn't crazy. So it wasn't like we were thinking, oh, we're going to quit our job and just be, Siegfried and Roy together of guns, like, and get a Tiger or something. I don't know. It wasn't like that necessarily. But I think Barry did find a lot of satisfaction in knowing that he was reaching people and getting his message out and everything. And I remember that Barry used to take our YouTube videos, and after we closed at Moss, he would play them back and just listen to them and
That's
watch them
awesome.
and all.
Yeah, that's so
and he would
cute.
read the comments.
That
Like he
is
wasn't very
adorable.
good at,
That's so
at
cute.
you know, responding or using
Yeah.
a computer, but he loved to read the comments
Yeah.
and everything. So I think he did enjoy it. And
Yeah.
there later, towards the end, you know, he was going through a lot of rough stuff in his life, and I don't want to, you know, discuss the man's business because that's
Sure,
his
yeah, no, no,
that's
that's
his
fine. No,
family's
that's totally
business
fine,
and
yeah.
everything like that. But Barry was going through a rough patch, and we all tried so much to do as much as we could to help him, and it just wound up, you know, not going well in the end for him. And he got off his meds, and of course, it had some disastrous effects on his health, and he succumbed to it eventually. And you know, our reaction, we were shocked when we heard how they found him and what happened to him. And it was terrible. We were all devastated because Barry was not only such a fixture of what we were doing with the channel that I thought was such a cool thing, but also he's just a great friend. And at the end of the day, like, Barry was a mentor to me. He was someone that I could always confide in with any problem I had in my life, even outside of the gun stuff. If I was having relationship problems or if I was having an issue, like I didn't know what to do, he was somebody I could always ask, hey, what would you do, Barry, in this
Yeah.
situation? And I always knew he'd give me the right answer. So it was devastating. Like he was like a brother figure, big brother figure, or even like a father figure in a way. Like, and that was the appeal of Barry, is that he was sort of a father figure to so many, because they sort of saw that sagely advice in
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
That, and the beard just is the
Yeah.
whole package.
It
Like he
helps,
had
yeah,
that
definitely
beard that made
helps,
him
yeah.
kind of sage-like. And I wish he was still here, because I really wish that he could see what we've done today and share in what we've done. But it's just terrible.
To show respect, obviously back then you retired Gun Gripes, and Barry was a huge part of it. And then eventually your fans wanted the show to come back. So how did you make that decision, and what was that time in your as a creator for you?
It was a hard time for us, because I thought that, you know, Barry was such an integral part of Gripes. Like, he and I had such great chemistry. I thought, well, surely no one's going to care about what I have to say about guns, or, you know, out of respect for Barry, I thought, well, you know, we're going to retire Gun Gripes. I made the announcement. I'm like, look, I'm really sorry to tell y'all about this, but, you know, we're probably going to retire Gun Gripes. And there was a huge outreach of people like, dude, you can't stop Gun Gripes. You got to keep going, because Barry would want you to keep going. I almost feel like maybe I knew that's what people would say, but I wanted to give them the option.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
To
if the
decide for
community,
themselves, yeah.
if the community said, yeah, you should do that, well,
Yeah.
then, all right, fine, we would have probably done it. But an overwhelming, like 95% of the comments were like, no, keep it going. So we kind of saw that as an indication that our viewers would want us to keep it going.
Talk to me about your personal life back then. Like, what was going through your head? Because, like, you know, Barry just passed away. Your show is kind of sort of like getting off the ground. You still work at the store.
Mm-hmm.
What was your decision-making process as a professional? Like, where did you want to commit full-time? Did you want to go the YouTube route, or do you want to work at the gun store? Like, what was going through your head?
I mean, I think that the ultimate situation that I wanted to see was to be a professional creator.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I saw that people were really digging what we were doing,
Yeah.
and people loved what we were doing, and the channel was starting to get off the ground and get more viewership and very fast growth, lots of subscribers and things like that. So, you know, it was getting to a point where I was having to take a few days off at Moss here and there. And look, Michelle is an angel. Like, she understood. She's like, hey, you got to take a few days off to go to a trade show or to a convention or to go do a meet and greet or to go film or whatever, or to take a little extra time off. So it started in a gradual sense that, okay, I need to take a few extra days off. And then eventually it was like, I got to take 3 days off, 4 days off. And then it's like, look, you know, I'm so busy with this YouTube stuff that I think I'm going to just do it full time. And you were asking about the way I felt personally.
Yeah.
Oh, believe me, the day that I went home and told my wife, you know, hey, I quit Moss.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this YouTube thing full time. And I expected her to be like, you what? You did what? But she was very supportive. And she was like, well, if that's what you want to do, I support you 110%. And she didn't give me any hard time about it. And eventually it got to a point where I was so busy that I needed her help. She quit her job. And then I think it was at that point that she and I kind of looked at each other and went, wow, we're really doing this, aren't we? Like, yeah, we are.
The reason I really like YouTube and like social media in general is because no matter how niche your passion is, if you are actually like truly passionate about it and you have somewhat of a talent of making content, you will eventually find an audience. And the reason I appreciate your content so much is because like I see the same passion in you, which I see in my friends talking about cameras or tech or computers, because that's my circle where I live. So like, but that passion is universal and omnipresent in the YouTube culture. So what is your take on like being a YouTuber specifically, and what has the platform given you so far?
Well, the platform has given me a lot of self-gratification. Like, I feel great to be able to produce what I want, when I want, how I want, to have complete control over the way that I put content out, what I talk about. We're very lucky to be a fixture in the Second Amendment community, not just a content creator, but, I did last year accept a position with Gun Owners of America. I'm the Georgia State Director now for that organization. So I'm actually now, ingrained more in the advocacy side of things, like more officially.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel very validated, and it helped. Gun Owners of America helps to validate what I'm doing, because they see, they see a benefit in what I do, and they see the good results of everything we're accomplishing with the channel. And then it allows me to use the channel as a vehicle to help Gun Owners of America. So it works out really well. I can push memberships and things. So being a little bit more involved on the advocacy side, I think, was a natural progression, because I can sit there on Gun Gripes and talk all day long about, hey, here's some issue or something like that. And that's fine. Like, getting the grassroots message out there to people is good. But now it's more official. Like, now I actually work under a gun rights organization, so I can help spread their message, grow their membership, and ultimately get good things done for the community. So it's very gratifying.
That's awesome. But like, has your relationship to YouTube changed in all this time? And the reason I'm honing in on that is because like, you were one of the first 50 people to be to be initiated into the YouTube partner program, right? How did that feel like in the beginning?
That's right. You're right. How did you know that?
Do
You
my
know all
research.
kinds of stuff. This guy's done his research, y'all. Wow. So you're right. I was one of the, from what I was told by YouTube, I was one of the first 50 people to be monetized on YouTube. So it has been a considerable change in the culture. To see the platform grow from this small fledgling little
Cat videos.
Cat videos to what it is now. Now you have what we affectionately call YouTube University, where people can go on YouTube and discover anything about any different concept they want, and they can learn all kinds of cool stuff from people that are their peers.
Yeah.
So which is awesome. YouTube has changed considerably over the years, but we've been like that Chernobyl cockroach. It's been kind of like impossible to kill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we're always hanging out in the corner. We're always doing our thing, and we roll with the punches, and we've also rolled with the culture. And YouTube has been very forthcoming and very understanding of what I do on the platform, and they've actually been very helpful. They've passed an olive branch to me on several occasions in certain situations, and they have done their best to help me out and through any sticky spots I might be in terms of dealing with an issue. We do have representation now, which is awesome. And when you have a company as big as YouTube with so many different points of view and so many different people that work at the company, some with obviously conflicting views in some situations, right? Some people might have a certain viewpoint on guns versus other folks may have a little bit more like-minded viewpoint to mine about guns that all work within a company. When a company gets real big, right? And it could be any big Fortune 500 company. It becomes its own little culture. It becomes its own little microcosm of society at large, right? And just like any government, it's almost like a miniature government. It's full of bureaucracy, and the ship, it will turn, but you got to give it a little time to turn. It takes a little time to make changes. It's not going to be instant. These things take time and everything like that. So I think that we've been very lucky that YouTube has been very forthcoming and helpful in our growth as content creators, and have supported us as content creators on their platform. And I am one of the kind of OGs around here. I've been around longer than the cobwebs on the on the ceiling. So they have been good. And I still believe that YouTube is an exceptionally good platform to experience growth and to grow an audience, as you said, within any area that you feel passionate about. If you can run a camera and present halfway decent, people are going to find you. It's like what Field of Dreams, right? If you build it, they'll come.
Totally.
That's what YouTube is. It's the field of dreams of people's content.
It is what you make of it, basically.
That's it.
I want to come back to YouTube, but I want to go back to the timeline real quick. 2017 specifically was an awkward time for a lot of creators because the platform was going through what back then we called the Adpocalypse. A lot of advertisers were getting spooked out of YouTube because their ads were running on content which they didn't want to run on. So as a gun creator, obviously the gun microcosm of YouTube was under the microscope, and a lot of gun content became age restricted and also demonetized from now and then. How did you react to that time and being specifically like put under a microscope?
I wouldn't necessarily say that we changed gears in any sort of way. We didn't really change what we were doing or how we were doing it. All we could really do is voice our concerns to YouTube. And believe it or not, more times than not, they were very understanding. That, hey, we understand you're a gun channel. We understand you do X, Y, Z or whatever. And there's always going to be pressures from different sides in any type of situation, right?
Yeah.
In fact, right now, we could even say that there's pressure from the pro-gun side that is causing some of these social media companies to kind of change gears a little bit more in the, hey, we're going to let people do their thing. And I'd like to think that's how things are going now. But in 2017, I believe it was a Hummingbird algorithm change.
Yep.
So when Hummingbird came down the pipeline, look, I'm a numbers guy. Like I like to crunch the data. I like to look at search engine optimization and statistics. And, I don't really have a background in that, but just from being a YouTuber all these years, again, YouTube University. You go on YouTube and go, hey, how do I write good descriptions? How do I write, good titles? How do I do the perfect thumbnail? How do I title a video in a way that works well? So with the Hummingbird algorithm change, we just had to kind of figure out like what we could do to soothe the algorithm a bit so it wasn't assigning us such a naughty back end sort of situation. So we maybe changed the way we wrote our descriptions a little bit, which keywords we used, the way that the title thumbnail looked. But overall, the content was pretty much unchanged.
What has been your relationship with, like you said, like YouTube is an insanely big company, right? And just like the government, we also want all these insanely big Fortune 500 companies, which has so much effect on the people who consume their content, to kind of sort of have the same representation of the country. Like just like the country has people who shoot guns, people who love guns, and people who don't like guns. So YouTube cannot have the people who do not know anything about guns whatsoever, because it kind of like behooves them to actually understand the culture, which attracts so many viewers and subscribers. So how would you say YouTube as an organization have changed their inner workings and gears to accommodate for the entire plethora of audience?
There's a lot of different opinions out there. And I think that the way that YouTube has approached it, now, of course, I can't speak for YouTube. It's just from my view of the situation from the outside looking in. And in some cases, maybe peeking under the skirt a tiny little bit, just a little. But I would say that generally they've kind of taken an approach of live and let live. And it's like, hey, as long as either side is not doing anything dangerous or hateful or dumb or whatever, hey, it's just like the idea of owning a gun, right?
Yeah.
If you want to own a gun, own a gun. If you don't want to own a gun, you don't have to own a gun. The same thing could be said for watching a YouTube video. I don't have to watch some anti-gun rant from an anti-gun channel if I don't want to. But if someone wants to seek out that information, they can watch it. Same thing with me. So how many strictly anti-gun messages are being spread that people are actually attaching to, and it's growing to the level that I'm growing, versus you look at me who has 2.7 or 2.8 million subscribers now, and what, 750 million views. Obviously, my message resonates with a lot of people. So the thing is, people are going to, at the end of the day, I'm going to let you in a little secret. At the end of the day, YouTube is a search engine. Right. So, as a platform, what people are searching for, what they're looking for, what they like, what they don't like, how long they watched it, who watched it, if they were male or female, all these statistics and all this data that we have on the back end for analytics. Trust me, YouTube knows exactly what people seek out and what they don't. So I think that at the end of the day, they're approaching it from a very logical standpoint. The logical standpoint is if people are seeking out this information, they need to be a platform that can provide that information, because obviously that's what they do. They're a search engine. So if people are looking for this, well, then by gosh, you better make sure you got a hit in there that they can click, because that's good for the advertisers. It's good for revenue. It's good for the content creators. We make money. YouTube makes money. And most importantly, above all, the person that's searching out and seeking out the information, if they were looking for a safety video to learn about the, top 5 gun safety tips or something like that, you better believe if they find it, they need to know that.
Yeah. So you said like top 5 gun videos. That brings me to the next question, which is, when you were making content, you were making all these kinds of content, like top 5 gun videos, gun meltdowns, sometimes just randomly blowing stuff up outside. So all of these content was actually defining who you are as a creator. But somewhere during that course, you actively, and correct me if I'm wrong here, took a decision that you also want to have a say in the larger discourse. You want to contribute to the conversation around guns, Second Amendment, and all the politics which surrounds it. So hypothetically, you could have easily stayed out of the muddy waters and just be a guy who reviews guns, who break down guns, who talks about gun grabs and all that stuff. But you decided to step into the nasty world of politics, for lack of a better term. Why did you do that?
Well, the low-hanging fruit would be to just focus on entertainment.
Yeah.
I'd probably get more views. I'd probably make more money. I'd probably have more sponsorship and advertisers and people that want to work with me. So it is a little bit of a lonely road, and I get it, right? Because think about it. What do people care about the most in their everyday life? Like they want to be outside of discourse. Like people hate politics. Your average Americans hate politics. They hate the idea of of any type of idea being political or being something that they have to advocate for. Like, I mean, I get it. Like it's all bread and circuses. In a lot of ways, people want to go online and be entertained. They want to hang out with their children. They want to go places. They want to experience life, and they want that to be as stress-free as possible. So believe me, I wish that I'd never had to make another political video again, but someone has to do it. Someone at the level that I'm at has to pick up the torch and say, you know what, we have to put this information out there, because if we don't, the mainstream media definitely isn't doing it right. If there's anything pro-gun that's being accomplished, you're never going to hear about it on any of the large social media platforms from any of the large talking heads, maybe other than someone like me. You're not going to hear about it on mainstream media, right? So it becomes almost a duty that if I don't say something about it, if I do nothing, well, the consequences of inaction are far worse than the consequences of, okay, maybe these political videos might not get as many views as some entertaining gun meltdown or something like that, but can I sleep at night knowing that I didn't use a platform that I've been gifted, essentially, that I've been lucky and blessed to get to have gotten to where I am now? If I didn't use my platform in a way that I thought helped gun owners at large of all different backgrounds, no matter who they are, what kind of person would that really make me at the end of the day?
That's a really good way to put it. And you brought up the media and the relationship which media has with Second Amendment, guns, and all the conversation around it. For better or worse, it usually is not talked about unless, something unfortunate happens, right? And then there's a lot of debate about, the most popular one is banning ARs and assault rifles and stuff like that. So, and that brings up the issue of the knowledge to begin with. People who have I have zero knowledge, right? I work in politics. I've spent a lot of time in politics, but since this is something which I know little to nothing about, I usually stay out of it because that's not my lane. But a lot of people who don't have that information, they still want to contribute to the discourse, and they, just for lack of a better term, just speak out of their ass because they do not have the basic prerequisite information. So what is it that you wished people in Washington, New York, LA knew about Second Amendment gun owners, which they currently don't talk about?
Well, I think that most people are very misinformed, and it always comes down to information. And you notice that the way that the media likes to paint certain situations, and I say the media, look at what Musk is doing with Twitter, right? He's really trying to create this space where it's like a town square. He always uses that term, town square. You notice too that again, we're going to get to the question, of course, but with Twitter, how Musk has all of the fact checkers come in, and whereby in the past, all these fact checks and additional information and editor's notes and community notes would always be skewed towards, sort of establishing the narrative.
One side of the narrative.
Yeah, only the one side of the narrative. But what Musk is trying to do is go, hey, well, actually, okay, guns are not the leading cause of children deaths, because in the statistics, Joe Biden calling out the president himself, saying, well, you can't count if you count people under 1 year old, and you're also counting people 18 and 19 years old in those statistics, that would be true. But that is not factually true. That is not the number one killer of children. So when we have a little help from people like Musk, it does make things a little bit better, right? Where people can actually be informed well. We're not trying to paint a situation where we go, hey, we're perfect and you should just think like we do or else. But people just need to get the unadulterated information. And most are smart enough to determine, hey, as long as I have the information, I'm a big boy or girl. I can make my own decisions about this particular topic. But the problem is, for so many years, people have been spoon-fed a narrative that gun owners are bad, that ARs are bad, or that firearms owners or firearms as a tool in general are somehow the problem. And that's just simply, factually, statistically untrue in so many ways, right? If the media reported with equal zest every time a firearm is used in defensive shooting, right, you would hear about defensive shootings quite a bit. But people think that, well, because we never hear about it on the media, then it must never happen. All these advocates of the Second Amendment that say that guns save lives, they don't see the evidence of it. But it's just because they're never shown the evidence, not because it doesn't exist. So there's a reason for it. And people are either misinformed, okay? They're either just ignorant. I mean, look, ignorance is something that can be cured. If you're willfully ignorant, that's your fault.
Yeah.
Right? I want all the information I can get. I want to be like a sponge. I want every one side. I want the anti-gunner side. I want the pro-gunner side. And I'm going to put it in this stew and I'm going to mix it up and get it bubbling and steaming. And then I'm going to go and take a little sip and go, all right, I know what this stew is.
Yeah.
We're good. And we move on with life. So ignorance is a choice. You have the choice to either be informed or to be ignorant. So it doesn't make someone a bad person to just not know. It's okay to not know, but people need to seek out the information, get the facts, get the real facts about what they're dealing with. And don't just accept a spoon-fed narrative about gun owners, because it's just simply not true.
You said like gun owners, like for non-gun owners who have never shot a gun, who have never been around guns, who have never been around people who own guns, guns is basically a proxy for violence, either by the law enforcement or by criminals. That is what their understanding of gun is, right? Whereas for people who own guns and are part of the culture, it is a lot of things. It is something recreational. It is something to go hunting with. It is something which helps spend time with their family. It is something they keep themselves safe with. So there's this, and it's like, I think in my opinion, it's like a city-rural divide as well, because people who don't shoot guns are usually in the cities as well. So there's like a cultural gap here as well. So that's why when there is a debate around gun ownership, Second Amendment, mass shootings, all this stuff, the most popular take which you hear from like non-gun owners is that these don't belong in today's society. Guns don't belong in today's society. The Second Amendment was written way back when they didn't have all this that we have today. How do you respond to that?
I mean, if someone had never been exposed to guns, I could see where that would be a logical standpoint, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's logical to go, well, I don't own a gun and my life seems to be okay. Well, obviously, if we just remove guns from society, then it won't affect my life because my life is the way it is now. I understand that. But I think it's also important for people to realize, like, well, maybe you don't know about those people. You're drawing conclusions about people that own firearms, or you're drawing conclusions about firearms ownership based on something you've been told rather than something that you can observe. When we look at, let's say, racial division, right? When you see all these videos that pop across your feed and it's some isolated incident of some violence of one person towards another, the first reaction is to go, oh, well, this type of person's violent because I saw that one isolated incident with no context to back it up, right? I think it's just important for people to realize like that there are a varying amount of cultures in this country, and firearms ownership is an ingrained part of American culture. It's extremely, extremely ingrained in our culture. And I understand there might be a lot of people that live in cities that maybe never been exposed to guns. And I would encourage someone who's never been around gun owners to just look, ask around at work or ask around at church, or just find someone in your local community that you know that happens to be a gun owner and go, hey, one day, can I go out to the range with you? And look, at least experience it one time. Go out and shoot a gun, or go out and take a class, or do something just to at least have the knowledge base to know that, okay, I've initiated contact with the gun owners, and this is what I think about them. And everyone's smart. Like you have that kind of idea in the back of your mind when you meet someone, if they're legit or not, or if they're actually kind, or if they're being fake. And it's like, when you get around a group of gun owners, like you realize, like, wow, I mean, when I get around my golf buddies, or if I get around my car buddies, or if I get around my fishing buddies or hunting buddies or church people, whatever, like you always know those conversations that you're in, if it feels right or if it doesn't. And you know those communities, like you get around the car people and you go, these people, they don't just like cars. They love cars.
Love cars, yeah.
And they know, they're passionate about it. So I would just suggest for someone who has a negative opinion about guns to go hang out with some gun owners for a while and just get the full story. Hey, if afterwards, if you still hate guns, fine. But at least you took it upon yourself to expose yourself to that community and understand what they're really about. That's the only way you can truly draw a conclusion about what your opinion is about the Second Amendment. Most people, 9 times out of 10, when I take them to the range for the first time, they've never shot a gun, they go, this isn't so bad. What are you talking about? Like, it's just a tool. Like, y'all seem like normal people that just happen to own guns. And you're going to find the overwhelming majority of people that own guns, they're all around you. And you may not know it. There might be people that you interact with on a regular basis, and you'll never know they're a gun owner because they may not be like me. They may not broadcast it to the world that they're into guns. There's a lot of those people that just kind of keep it on the low. So you'd be surprised if you let guns come up in conversation around people that you think may not be gun owners. You might find yourself quite surprised that there might be a lot more people around you into it than you think.
My last question to you would be, you have spent so many years as a creator, as someone who is leading the conversation in this subculture. What does the future look for you, not just as an active participant in the culture, but also as one of the leading content creators in the space?
Well, I'd like to see YouTube be a place that, people can come to and grow as a content creator in this space. And because they're going to look at guys like me and go, well, I'd like to try this, or I'd like to, make YouTube videos. And we see all the time new gun channels popping up. So I would love to see other channels become successful as well and spread their message. And ultimately, look, the older I get, the more disconnected from some of the younger folks I'm going to be. It's just the fact of that's just how things are. Like younger folks are going to want to hear from other younger folks about certain issues. So I do want to see some of these younger upcoming content creators kind of carry on the torch a bit. And I've also got to look at it from the standpoint of how am I going to top what I've already done? I mean, staying relevant is important. How do you stay relevant in a space where you've made 2,000 videos that essentially every time I put up a new video, I have to compete with everything I've already done.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes I have to think about that. I know we were discussing that kind of low key earlier before we got into this interview, but it's just interesting how you're essentially combating everything you've already done. Like, how do you top what you've already done? So we're always looking for new ways to kind of up the ante. So you never know what's up my sleeve. I might have a few things and a few more tricks up my sleeve.
Another question I have for you is again, I live in New York and I'm around creators a lot, and creators give each other a lot of information about their video ideas, how they're doing, how they make money and all that stuff. I came to your compound a couple of hours ago. You live, for lack of a better word, in the middle of nowhere. Are you around a lot of creators, and how do you stay, you said you brought up being relevant, are you around other gun creators, and what is the relationship between you and other gun creators right now?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, so my wife, Brandy, handles all of the organization with Range Day. So last year we had our 10th annual Range Day that we do every year, usually around the first weekend of October. So we have a great relationship with all of the gun creators here on YouTube and in other places too. We've expanded. We know a lot of the people that are doing stuff on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and all of this sort of stuff, and many, many other different platforms. But my wife has kind of become like the matriarch of this community, and she loves it. It's a job that she relishes in, and she really enjoys it. And you saw where we we are geographically. We're in the middle of nowhere. And as you can imagine, our internet sucks. I got Starlink last year. Big shout out to Starlink, but I got my Starlink satellite. So now I've got fast enough internet out here that I can do streaming here from the house. So I do want to eventually start doing some live streams on YouTube, but we also use a platform called StreamYard, and I can just do my kind of little live edits and stuff. So I can actually have a guest on the channel that they might be in another country or state or anywhere, right? I can actually do my StreamYards and have my guests on the channel anytime I want. So that's actually allowed me a lot of flexibility where someone doesn't have to physically come here if they don't want to. We try to be very active in the community, and a lot of the new content creators that are up and coming, we try to support them. I share their stuff on social media. I'll share their videos on my YouTube feed, anything I can do to help them on the upcoming side. So we're very excited for the future. And I think that there is a bright future ahead for the Second Amendment community in general and for content creators. And ultimately, I believe for YouTube as well. I think the platform is going to continue to be successful. It's going to continue to be a megalodon. And I believe they are going to spread their wings and kind of shed their skin a little bit and really become the platform that they can be. And I think that those days are coming for the platform.
Perfect. That's a really good way to end it. And I'm super glad that you are so optimistic about not just the platform, but also the space in general.
You have to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Look, you have to live life with a degree of optimism.
Yeah.
You got to look at reality. You have to understand that things are the way they are for a reason, and that there are things that are out of our control. I believe later in life, I've gotten a little more stoic and just tried to understand, hey, I can control what I can control, and what I can't control, I can't control.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important for people to realize, like, to remain positive. Things are going to be okay. Things are going to be better. Again, be the change in the world you want to see. That's all you can do. And the rest of it will come in time. It will. I promise.